International Day of Education to everyone. We celebrate another 24th of January 2022 with the same story. We are going to be talking about our education. This is the 5th edition of the Legal Talk Show that is hosted by Say What 577. That's their call center. It's going to be giving you information on things that you need to do, need to understand, need to know, pieces of information that may help you in your day-to-day decision making. So here today, we're going to talk about the International Day of Education. We are going to talk about how education is a basic right for every child, for every person in Zimbabwe. We are going to be talking about the state of our education, how it has progressed from the time of independence to now, how it has worked through the years, and what is happening exactly to it as we get into this COVID era, as our COVID era is slowly turning into our new normal. So we're going to be talking about everything. We're going to be talking about these. I have two gentlemen with me here. One is from UZ, one is from MSU. They are both law students. I will let them introduce themselves as soon as we get into our questions, and we will get into this deep discussion about why tiri kutaura nenyaya dzechikoro chakanyanya kukoshei, what's happening in Zimbabwe every single day. Are we dealing with education the same way we should be dealing with it? Is it still as valuable as it's supposed to be? We're going to start with our first question. What is the state of education in Zimbabwe? What is the state of education in Zimbabwe? What does it currently look like?
Thank you, Carol. I think I will go first. I am Tapiwa Nashe Chiriga, and I'm a former student leader, formerly Secretary General of the Zimbabwe National Students Union. But with regards to the state of education in Zimbabwe, I would say that it is in its dire straits. It is in a crisis. It is a crisis of its own, which is reflective of the crisis that we face in Zimbabwe. We have education that is no longer accessible to the poor among.
Education is more of a right than anything else. So you talk about how people cannot access it. Are you saying that there's no delivery of that education as a basic right? Because what we have in the Constitution is that it is a basic right of every child in Zimbabwe.
Yes, the constitutional obligation that lies on the government of Zimbabwe of the day, and the right that accrues to every citizen in this country, young or old, that accrues to them by virtue of them as Zimbabweans, of them being a Zimbabwean citizen, is not exactly realized at the present moment. Young people in Zimbabwe are failing to access tertiary education. It is reported by Parliament that 37.3% of our young people of school-going age from 3 years to 18, are the only people who are accessing education in the present moment. Our schools are in terrible states, and you can see that even with the coming in of the COVID-19 pandemic, there are people from areas where they were not even going to school pre-2020, pre the lockdowns of 2020 because of various reasons. For example, the young people from Chimanimani out there who were affected in 2019 by the cyclone Idai, where their schools were destroyed and everything, their lives were disrupted. And when they wanted to go back to school in 2020, they were disrupted again by the COVID-19 pandemic. So we have a generation whose future is being swept away right now by the floods, but by the flood of poverty more than anything else.
I see that. Well, I will ask our next question. Our next question would be, how far has the government fulfilled Section 27 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe? That is to say, the free compulsory basic education. How far have they gone to deliver that? Have they delivered it? And are they delivering it in the manner that they're supposed to?
Thank you for that question. I think I'll take that one. But before I do, I think we need to do an honest assessment of the education system or the state of education in Zimbabwe. My name is Nashe Sagonda. I'm a student leader at the University of Zimbabwe, fourth year student who's studying law. I think our education system, we should not flatter with bogus arguments to say it's terrible. I think our education system is at crossroads. Even the nation itself, we are at crossroads. We are at a time where we are supposed to make a choice for ourselves, even as us as students, looking at ourselves as students, to say, what contribution are we willing to make sure that we do take the necessary steps in actually realizing the constitutional rights that have been enshrined by the Constitution. The government has taken steps in making sure that they do their fair share in actually realizing these educational.
Would you say that? Would you say the government has taken the necessary steps?
Definitely, yes. If we are to look at the transition, I think history will help me to elaborate or illustrate the point. In the year 1980, when we realized independence, we had close to 600,000 students who were enrolled in primary and secondary education. By the year 2018, we had close to 2.7 million students actually undertaking primary and secondary education. Though with the discrepancies of COVID-19, I would say the state is at crossroads whether to say, do we advance in making sure that we make education accessible? Because lots of things have changed. Now people are trying to adopt to the new normal. People are looking at questions to do with online learning, accessibility, which is a challenge. So the state and government are at a stage where they are looking at whether they should actually put more effort in making sure that, someone in Gwanda, in Lupani, in Chimanimani, they actually access education online. Like we are looking at the advancements, not at the terrible nature, but we are looking at the things that possibly that might bring hope, even to kids who do not have this platform that we are actually using.
So the government to you has fulfilled this section. They have delivered and made education accessible. To you, they've not made the delivery accessible.
Maybe if I hear my brother correctly, he speaks of hope. But I think that what the people need in this country right now is less of hope and the actuality of the realization of the right to education. And as your question states, and in Section 27 and Section 75 of the Constitution states, education in its basic and elementary form must be free, compulsory, and accessible to every person. Go to the rural areas right now. Many young people are not accessing education. Not to belittle the efforts that have been made to build more schools in Zimbabwe since 1980. Not to disregard the efforts that have been made to allocate resources to the education sector. But that has proven to be simply not enough, because people out there are learning under very squalid conditions in the rural areas. Education is continuously and progressively becoming a preserve of the rich. The moment you start looking at education from the lenses of maybe those who are in the urban areas, those who are privileged, without necessarily going back to where 67% of our population resides in the rural areas, that is the moment then we lose it. Yes, education, there has been strides in the country since 1980, but more has to be done. And in the present circumstances, bearing in mind that in the 1980s that my brother speak of, our own parents accessed primary education for free, but it consistently and persistently became something that was paid for, with little excuses every other time, until a time like today where people cannot afford to go to school because of
I see. So at the end of the day, we blame the economy.
We blame the economy, but definitely I think there is more to do rather than pointing fingers at the economy. I think the question comes to matters of implementation. To say if they are resources, are they getting to the right person? Are they getting to the last person? If it's a question of statistics, definitely I would want to applaud and say Zimbabwe at the moment situation, we are rated I think fourth in Africa with the literate rate, which is close to 87%. But I would want to say, despite the economic challenges that we have, we still come back to the initiatives that we are supposed to be taking as students, because you realize there's nothing for students without the students.
What am I supposed to do as a student? I live in a place where I cannot access Wi-Fi, I cannot access online learning. What am I supposed to do?
Your voice, my voice, it becomes one voice. So sometimes the initiative is not to be initiated by government. There's one thing that I like about Zimbabweans. We entirely depend on government. We entirely depend on institutions. Rather than we have looked, we haven't looked at ourselves, and we haven't looked at the capacities that we have as Zimbabweans to say, guys, we can do this. Yes, government is there, but as teachers, what are we doing to make sure that we even advance ourselves as teachers in terms of capacity, in terms of development, be it to students, be it to everyone who is part of the whole process. There is lots of things to talk about besides pointing fingers at the government.
I will move on from this question for a time. Our third question would be, what measures should be put in place to make sure that the girl child's right to education is guaranteed? Girl child rights are things that we're talking about globally, right? We need to be talking about how she is getting her education, because very little of resources in situations is she put as a priority. So people are talking about that. What do you think? What measures can we put to make sure that she's getting educated?
Number one is making sure that we continuously build more schools, so that the girl child in the rural areas, I'm particularly concerned about the girl child in the rural areas because she is the most disadvantaged human being right now in Zimbabwe. So we build more schools so that she does not have to walk 10 kilometers to access education at the tender age of 6. We make sure that those existing structures, those existing education facilities are built in a manner that makes it safe for both the girl child and the boy child. We also make sure that we retrain, or at least train our teachers in a manner that makes the environment of learning safe, whether she is being taught by a male teacher, by a female teacher, we make it safe. We also make sure that we encourage those female students who have maybe fallen pregnant or who have had issues that have stopped them from accessing education, to make sure that they come back to school, because it should not be a hindrance that someone is probably fallen pregnant and they can't continue with education. If they can continue at their personal level, we should always make sure that they come back to school and they learn, because education should be available. Even in terms of the UNESCO declaration, it says that education should be available in its quality form for the young and for the old.
But when we talk about the girl child, we then proceed to even talk further than, can she get an education? Let's say, fine, the government has made it a declaration. We are going to make sure that the girl child goes to school. But then when we talk about the girl child, there are a lot of issues that surround the girl child. Yeah. Let's talk about, fine, you're allowing her to go to school as a government, but then her society is extremely patriarchal. So patriarchal, school for her is not much of an option despite your constitution. It becomes less of you're a girl child, these are your duties as per our tradition, as per our culture, as per the patriarchal society that we live in. So at the end of the day, is there something that we can do? Are there measures that we can put in place to say, are we catering not only for her education, but are we catering for the fact that she's an actual person, an entire entity within the society she's living? She's not getting wrapped up in all this, no, let's let her get married, let's do the bride price, let's do all of this. Are there measures that we can do?
Definitely, yes, there are measures that are actually there. They are actually, for the girl child, for the girl child empowerment. I think we should look at the Education Act. There is an amendment. I think we should also look at questions to do how matters to do with early child marriage have been dealt with, to see whether the full rights of the girl child are being guaranteed, to the extent that we note that there has been a positive stride by government to make sure that the rights of the girl child have been enshrined, starting with the educational rights. Because the education in Zimbabwe, it's accessible to everyone. It's not discriminatory. Actually, there used to be actually girl child empowerment moves, like to say, if you are to get enrolled for a program that is required 15 points, if you're a girl, maybe they will admit you on 13 points. That's affirmative action for the girl child. So those policies and all those strides are actually being made to make sure that the girl child is guaranteed of her educational rights, of her sexual reproductive rights. Even looking at the current bill that is being run by Parliament to look at questions of sexual harassment in tertiary institutions. All those are positive strides to make sure that the girl child is safe and protected.
Yes, sure, fine, which is fair and fine. You're talking very constitutionally, which is very loyal of you. But we want to talk about, we recently, there was a social media issue that happened when a girl child, she was 9, I assume, I forgot. She was 9, she was part of a long line of girls that had been getting married to an older man. That was based on religion. Yes. According to their religion, that was okay. Yeah, so that issue right there fortunately got in loud enough for people to hear and the authorities to hear. But we have so many young women like that going through the same things. They just didn't blow up on social media as much as this did. So what are we doing? Are there measures that we can do to make sure that these things at least are noted or seen or prevented? We're talking about religion being a reason why a girl child is not going to flourish in a society. So are there ways that we can help those children?
Again, maybe I will fall into the trap that my brother fell into, that you say that you say that he is speaking like a lawyer. I will equally say that because the cure to every problem that Zimbabwe is facing right now even lies in the constitution of the country and the laws that are promulgated by parliament. Firstly, it is a crime, it is illegal, and it is unconstitutional for anybody to get married before the age of 18. So it is now a matter of enforcement of those laws. Number one. Number two, I also say that these families, they have ceased sending their female children to school for the simple reason that they do not have adequate resources, and then they will concentrate their resources on the boy child. But there is equally a cure in the constitution for that. What am I talking about? Section 27 of the Constitution that you once talked about, Section 75 of the Constitution, which makes basic education free. So if education in its basic and elementary form was free, there was no child, male or female, who would stop going to school because their parents cannot afford to send the girl child to school. So the cure, like I said, lies in making education available, accessible, and free in its basic and elementary form. Now, going back to the issue of Anna Machaya, may her soul rest in peace, we as a society, we are not giving these matters much more traction, much more attention. I think the media and civil society organizations need to start giving these societies their own voice beyond speaking on their behalf. Look at us right now. We're sitting here, or all of us were in Harare in the morning, and we're talking about rural children who are not accessing education. Why are we not in Marange there? Looking at them, giving them their own voice, because Zimbabweans have to tell their own story in their societies. So the moment we give these people a voice, it doesn't have to be blowing up on social media. These are the day-to-day issues that our media, that our politicians, that our civil society organizations should be focusing on. The material conditions of our people, the lived realities of our people, that should be the focus of this country.
I agree. Okay, well, at the end of the day, what we are looking at is a situation where our society has socialized so many wrong things, so much so that your constitution will not stand in terms of the principles that society has accepted as normal.
It will, if it is enforced properly. Because
so you are not enforcing it properly as the government.
The constitution is being enforced properly. The only question that we might have is the question to say to what extent. But I think since the enactment of the constitution from 2013 to date, the government has tried to make sure that they implement the constitution in its whole entirety as a document. But I think it's more than just implementing. It's also a question of us accepting and also us taking part in the initiative, like you truly say, to say we need to tell the Zimbabwean story from where it's happening. So we need to be in Marange. Yes. So that's where the initiative is. So if we are to raise the voice, we are to raise the voice where the challenge is. You understand? To say
it gets us to Section 7 of the Constitution,
yes,
which says that government, civil society, and every other person in this country must take the initiative to make sure that this Constitution and any other law that governs this country must be taught, must be made simpler in understanding to the men on the street, to the men in Marange, to the men in Burundi, in Beitbridge there. Any layman should be able to understand the Constitution. Because at the end of the day,
you are going to put your jargon into your Constitution and we are not going to understand anything. I want to thank Arthur and Tapiwa, two law students from UZ and MSU respectively. I want to thank them for the fair share of information that they have had to be giving us today. We are Say What, and we are going to be available for social media platforms. If you happen to need help, you can call the number 577 and you can get instant help for anything. We have been proud to have this very helpful discourse. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And we are very happy to say, mask up, sanitize, get vaccinated. Be safe out there. The world is a very cruel world. Be safe out there and register to vote. Thank you.